I'm currently writing some scripts, and I'm finding these tiny dynamics of selecting words and the amount of words per panel. Let's say, let's choose the 9 panel per page standard. If you use that as a standard, how many words is too much or is appropriate for each panel? I have found that it changes in the superhero comic books, because sometimes in superhero comic books you need that dialogue to develop the story and understand what's happening. But I don't know, and in Spanish and in English, I think there's a difference in the case of the amount of words. But how do you select the words per panel? Do you select the shape of the panels?
I was told once that I don't know if it's through Marvel, but your bubble shouldn't have more than 4 sentences in a bubble.
No more than 4 sentences.
No more than 4. But I mean, they do go over. But to me, I mean, when I do stuff, if it's my own book, it really comes down to how much would I want to read in that panel. And I've got raging ADD, so I always go picture first when I read comics, and then it's reading secondary. And I'm one of those guys where if it's a lot of words in the balloon, I'll admit I don't read that balloon. I get lazy and I like. But sometimes you have to use that. If you read a Sandman book or a Neil Gaiman book, it's a shitload of words in that thing. And it's not my fault I'm a lazy ass and don't want to read all those words. But I know people who've read those words and they're the most beautiful words on earth, so they can quote that stuff. And I've got friends who can do that left and right with stuff. You can't sit there and go, well, they're not going to want to see this, they're not going to want to read that, they're not going to. Otherwise, you'll pick your book apart. You won't ever make a book. So just make it the way you would want to read it, and then let them decide if it was too much. That's my advice. It's the same, whether it's 9 panels or. I know panels. I remember Mark Waid and Waringo did that issue of Fantastic Four where Franklin is sitting on the floor with his blocks, and out of the whole panel he just says Doom, and it was such a huge. It's like hitting a bass drum, Doom, and any other words in that panel would have screwed that panel up. So it's really, you can't think of it as story and art. When I wrote this script was really tight for Kenny to draw. I mean, because I drew it first, and then when I write, I just describe whatever's on the page I drew. I don't just sit down and go, that one page one setting is. I can't do that. I start in the middle of a story and I work sideways. It's the worst thing to do. And I don't start from the beginning to the end. I go to my favorite scene and I write that, I draw it out, and then I go, well, how do I get to this point now? I got to get to this cool scene I want to do. So I don't want to call it bullshit, but I just carry it to that point. And sometimes that cool moment's the beginning, sometimes in the middle, sometimes it's the finale. In this book, the coolest moment for me, there were a few of them, but I remember the first one was them carrying the thing to Calle San Sebastian. That these guys would, to me it was like, it's such a goofy, stupid sign of manhood. But I remember drawing that whole scene out. That was the first page I drew was that. And then it was the Chupacabra, and how can we be sympathetic towards them? The Mole Man was a big thing. So I try to go towards that moment.
So you don't work like in trying to choosing the amount of panels per page, or even what kind of events in the page?
I guess my students ask me all the time, how do you do panels? I cannot explain that at all. I know I have a scene in my head, and I just read so many comic books that I know how that would float, how that would show. It's frustrating to explain.
Is it about timing, maybe? It's about timing?
No, because I know this scene will get me there in 4 panels, but if I go 6 panels, I can stretch it out a little bit. And I always like, most of my books are talking head books. I don't have those big scenes. In Chupacabra, I kind of have those scenes, but I still write it like it's sort of true story.